Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly for pricing, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Today we're discussing the latest version of a watch that launched back at Baselworld 2004. This is the Breguet 3810ST, also known as the Type 20. It is a larger, bolder, and yet still historically inflected take on the classic Breguet Type 20 pilot's chronograph, a chronograph that was originally named after the mid-1950s French aviation contract that actually spawned the type. It was the Type 20 contract, and while Breguet did not make the only Type 20 contract watch for the French military aviation arms, nevertheless, it did build the watch the longest, and it is the best associated with the name. And the Type 21 continues that legacy in a 42mm steel case. Now, it's 15.4 millimeters thick, and from lug to lug, it's 48.5 millimeters, but if you include the solid end links of the bracelet, then it is a beefy 56.7 millimeters across the wrist with a 22mm spacing between the lugs. Pop the clasp open. It is a friction snap type, and throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference. I probably wouldn't wear this watch on a wrist much smaller than mine. I think you go with a Type 20 if your wrist is 15 centimeters circumference or smaller. You could try this watch on a 15 centimeter wrist, but you can see right here, those end links in particular are just about at the edge of my wrist. So big guys with big wrists, this is your watch. It's pretty thick, but it also has a dramatically sloped bezel. It's worth trying with a dress cuff. You should be okay with a jacket, though. Taking a quick look at the bracelet, you can see it's a 3-link design, but thankfully, it's an original. It looks nothing like the 3-link Rolex Oyster that is endlessly iterated by other brands. And it's a fascinating design. There is a little bit of a taper as it pulls away from the 22mm spacing of the lugs. Polished flanks, you can see there's a little bit of fluting on the edge of the links, and I like that detail. It also features polishing in between the satination of the center links, and that's also the kind of feature you see on, for example, a Vacheron Overseas. It's an impressive and thoughtful detail on what otherwise could have been just a generic sports watch bracelet. Breguet managed to make it beautiful. Removable links are fixed in place by screws, so you can see the relatively small screws, giving you the ability to finely size the fit. Now, the clasp, as you can see, features a Breguet logo externally. It is a friction snap, which is quite secure in practice, and it has a single-fold satin finish deployant inside. In other words, it's not a diving clasp, but it's outstanding for aviation purposes. The case is distinctly evocative of the Type 20. What's fascinating is that in spite of its military origins, the Type 20 style case is quite elegant, with a teardrop profile, lovely taper to the lugs, a coined case flank, high polish. It looks downright elegant. Now you can see there are vintage-inspired pump-style pushers, but the crown is a screw-down, and the watch is 100 meters water-resistant. You'll note that the bezel is a aviator's bezel, which means it is bidirectional rotating, and what can be used for timing, it is not strictly speaking a dive bezel because it can move in either direction. Now you line up the luminescent triangular index with the minute hand, and then you have a timer that can run in parallel to the chronograph. Now, the chronograph on this watch, important to remember, it's based on the Lemania 1350, which is one of the finest cam lateral clutch chronographs ever made, and it works a little bit differently than a conventional chrono. You've got a 24-hour hand that represents the AM/PM status at the top of the time you're viewing at center. So that's not a 24-hour register for the chronograph. Rather, it's telling me that I'm looking at roughly 1:30 in the morning, because you can see I'm just past, or rather 1:30 in the afternoon, as I'm just past 12 midday. So I know when I'm looking at this at a glance whether I'm looking at the top of this subdial, which is the day, or the striated bottom, which is the night. So that is how you discern AM/PM. That's not a chronograph register. Fascinating thing about the chronograph, it uses a central 60-minute indicator, so this hand makes one circuit around the dial every hour. So unlike many watches which only feature a 30-minute chronograph register, here we get a true 60-minute register, and because it has this long centrally mounted hand coaxial with chronograph seconds, it's very easy to read individual minutes, and that can be tough on a small register. Now when you take a look at the dial base itself, there is a date down at 6 o'clock. The watch has a quick set date, though it does not have hacking seconds. Everything resets and restarts starts with a push of the trigger, retour en vol. It is flyback, and it is a flyback in the tradition of the original Type 20. And the idea is that you can time events that occur in rapid succession during flight pattern planning or execution. Now, you can see the dial features a metallic base. There's a bit of a stepped center dial, and then there are sunken sub-registers for constant seconds, chronograph hours, and then there's that 24-hour scale. Now, the watch does feature a larger 24-hour scale than the other two registers, so that information is privileged. The font is vintage evocative, but it's not a printed dial. As you can see, there are these lovely diamond polished and rhodium plated steel individual diamond style indices outboard. They're like little twinkling cut gems. Underneath the case back, you get the caliber 584Q, Q meaning it has a calendar, and it's based on that Lamagna 1350. Automatic winding. It is a 8 beat per second movement with a quick set, the flyback functionality, cam and lateral clutch chronograph operation, and a 45-hour power reserve, all of that water resistant down to 100 meters. Reach out to Tim Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing. Back with the Type 21 by night, note the 24-hour index is visible.